Today I'm planning on doing a little talk on one of Magic the Gathering's original creature types. Slivers. Love them or hate them, everybody generally has an opinion. Um, and they've definitely changed over the years. But I've been playing long enough that I remember when they were first introduced and some of their early steps. Today I'm going to go over basically the first 3 generations of Slivers, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what happened afterwards. But unfortunately, I don't have as much to say about that because once the fourth wave hit, they just started to change a little bit too much. And that was also the period where I was starting to get a little disenfranchised with Magic and didn't keep up with it as regularly. So I didn't follow as much of the stuff or have as many of the cards to showcase. So it is what it is.
Oh, I should make sure that I fix
Hurry up already, LOL. Well, thanks, Tank. Thanks for coming. And I'm glad you're anxious to dive into some of this. What are we changing?
I'm just making sure that it says all messages and not just top messages.
Okay. All right. So, had a little bit of a trim today. It's completely irrelevant. Hi, Founder. Just changing up my angle a bit here so that I can show... don't want to be looking up my nose. Trying to avoid that one. Whoops. I did not. Sorry. Thank you. Let's swap this around. That didn't work. There we go. We can shove some of this out of the way. And let's pull over our first stack of Slivers. So, the Sliver creature type is known for sharing abilities amongst the hive, basically. So, you bring out a first strike Sliver, all your Slivers gain first strike. And during the first 3 waves, which is what we're focusing on, if your opponent had Slivers, they also gained whatever abilities you were sharing around. So, let's start here. Nope, not quite. The first release of Slivers. Tempest, way back in 1997, was the first time that they experimented with the Sliver creature type. Tempest included 11 Sliver cards. Every color got a common and an uncommon Sliver. All the commons were 2 cost, all the uncommons were 3 cost. So very straightforward. The commons were 1/1s, the uncommons were 2/2s. So white got Talon Sliver. All Slivers gained first strike. And again, Girard and his shipmates were the ones discovering all this. Keep them at sword's length. Order fell flat as each Sliver's talons suddenly grew longer. Hold on, break out the pole arms. And the white one, Armor Sliver. Each Sliver gains the ability to pay 2. This creature gets an extra toughness until end of turn. And again, Hannah and Miri, 2 more people from that block. So this was the common and the uncommon Sliver for white. Let's start laying them out here. Green got Muscle Sliver. All Slivers get +1/+1. The air was filled with the cracks and snaps of flesh hardening as the new Sliver joined the battle. And Horned Sliver. All Slivers gain Trample, 2/2 for 3 for the uncommon. Blue Winged Sliver. All Slivers gain Flying. Very good if you're trying to get in for some damage. Everything around here is struck a deal with gravity. And Mnemonic Sliver. I think this one was a little bit underrated. Each Sliver gains pay 2 and sacrifice this creature to draw a card. How this interacted with damage on the stack and stuff has changed over the years. But still, anytime one of your creatures is about to die, being able to draw a card to replace it is potentially a nice ability to have. Red had Heart Sliver. Slivers are unaffected by summoning sickness, so that's haste nowadays. You know, 1/1 for 2. And Barbed Sliver, like the white one, it's a paid ability. You can pay 2. This for any sliver you have. Once this is on the board, this creature gets +1 attack until end of turn. Then you had Black Clot Sliver. Each sliver could regenerate for 2 colorless. You notice a lot of these abilities cost 2 colorless, so I mean it was a little bit mana intensive for a lot of these abilities early on. Hey Becca, welcome. One would think I would be accustomed to unexpected returns. And the Mind Whip Sliver. Each sliver gets pay 2, sacrifice this creature, target player discards a card at random. Play this ability as a sorcery. So again, you could potentially empty your opponent's hand if you were worried about some trick they might have up their sleeve. And
Hey,
then the
Becca.
11th was another common sliver available, Metallic Sliver. It counts as a sliver, doesn't share any abilities. 1/1 for 1, artifacts, creature, sliver. When the clever counterfeit was accepted by the hive, Volrath's influence upon the slivers grew even stronger. So this was a secret brood that Volrath had going in his stronghold for when they were planning the invasion using the Plane of Wrath and stuff. The slivers were, at this early stage, an interesting novelty. There really weren't enough of them to get any truly broken strategies going. But they were fun, and being all commons and uncommons, for new players like myself and most of my friends, they were something that was fun to play with. There was, in Tempest, a starter deck, pre-constructed starter deck, that you could get that was Sliver themed. Interestingly enough, they chose it to be black and blue. So you got several clot slivers, several wing slivers, the 2 common ones. You got a bunch of metallic slivers as well, just so you'd have as many creatures as possible. I believe you only got 1 mnemonic sliver, which I think was an oversight. I think they should have had at least 2 of those. But you got 2 or 3 of the Mind Whip sliver. So it was very much focused on being able to get rid of your opponent's hand. Dealing with rough signal, but I am here. Well, that's unfortunate, but thanks for coming.
These people remind me of StarCraft, the bad thing.
Yeah, they do. They do look a little bit like the Zerg and Zerglings
Zergs.
and things like that. Not the first person to make that connection.
Tank, I'm here as well. Well,
thanks, Tank. So yeah, these were the slivers plus the metallic one that the starter deck from Tempest was based around. One of my cousins had it. Again, I found that an interesting selection because, as most of us playing with these slivers at the time found, you look at all these abilities, and again, it shares to them all. And whether it's a paid ability or something like Unaffected by Summoning, Sickness, or First Strike or Flying, all of these abilities, if you play a second copy, it's basically just another body. It doesn't add anything. The abilities don't stack or anything, with the exception of one. And that one was Muscle Sliver. So this was almost universally, at this early stage, decided to be the best sliver available. Because it's stacked, you got a 2/2 for 2, which was fine at the time. And you played a second copy, you had 2/3/3s at 2 cost apiece, which was above rate. So usually, if you were going to try and play slivers, most people played green with a full set of muscle. Sometimes they'd throw in a couple of horn slivers as well, since you're in that color anyway. Getting trample won't hurt for bigger creatures. And then they would splash in a second or potentially third color for some of the other more interesting abilities that were available. Most of these had one weaker and one stronger, and interestingly, for most of them, the common was usually considered the stronger. So you might splash in blue for flying and the ability to sacrifice, or red for haste, or first strike and white. But most sliver decks at this time were based around green, except for the precon, which was blue-black, as I've already mentioned. Interesting having evasion control can certainly help if you can regenerate and manipulate cards in both your hand and your opponent's. So that was really interesting with this first wave of slivers, and it did have just a very casual deck building good time going on. But again, like I said, there really weren't enough of them to do anything too broken. They weren't super powerful, but they were readily available. So that was really nice. Nice introduction to slivers. And it was followed up with the second set in the Tempest block, Stronghold. And in Stronghold, they introduced the multicolored slivers. And here you got a bit more spicy, and this is when slivers started to become potentially usable for tournaments. So you had the Victual Sliver. All the uncommon ones here, they're all multicolors, but the 5 uncommons were each 2 allied colors for a 2/2. So you're starting out at that 2/2 for 2 rate, which was reasonably efficient at the time, plus gaining abilities. This was probably one of the weaker ones. Each sliver gains pay 2, sacrifice this creature, gain 4 life. Okay, if it's going to die anyway, you could get some value out of that. If you're desperate for life, fine. Crystalline Sliver. This was the big tournament game changer. If you could get in these guys, along with usually your muscle slivers and your winged slivers, especially, you had evasive creatures that could not be the target of spells or abilities, which meant they were hard to get rid of, they were hard to block, and you had some fairly efficient size. If you could get the muscle slivers going in there too, they would also tend to grow, which was rather nasty. So this was definitely a tournament staple type once they got to that level. Bred as a living shield, these slivers have proven unruly. They know they cannot be caught. It was never a top-tier strategy that I recall. It was still rather niche, but at least this made it possible. Hibernation Sliver, also used at times. Good if your opponent plays a board wipe, something like Wrath of God, which obviously this wouldn't protect from. Each sliver gains pay 2 life, so no mana needed, just life. Return this creature to owner's hand. So, they're going to Wrath and kill off my whole board. Well, I can pay 2, save my Crystalline Sliver to rebuild with, and save one of my other best slivers. So you pay 4 to 6 life, keep your 2 or 3 best slivers, and you got a much quicker rebuild ready to happen. Nice, glad you got that fixed. Acidic Sliver. Not too bad. Each sliver gains pay 2, sacrifice this creature. This creature deals 2 damage to target creature or player. So you got the mana. That could be used to finish off a player or get rid of a strategically annoying creature. I'd say this one's sort of mid. It wasn't as influential as these two, but it still could be useful, and certainly a little bit more so than the Victual Sliver. And Spine Sliver, yeah, here's a taste of what's to come. I got the wrong expansion icon here when I was rifling through and grabbing examples, but it was in Stronghold first. And again, basically the same, just the formatting's a little bit different. 2/2 for green and red. Whenever a sliver becomes blocked, that sliver gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature blocking it. So yeah, there we have the 5 uncommon ones from Stronghold that really helped flush out the color combinations and just give you more bodies, and again a little bit more efficient if you have the right colors as well. Still tricky to build around, but added a lot more potential. And speaking of potential, Stronghold also introduced the first and only at this time rare sliver, the Sliver Queen, which was a beast. Because this also, as a legendary creature that cost 1 of each color mana, for an official released set, and not some sort of concept card or whatever, not many of these had been released yet. In fact, I think this might have been the first card ever released that cost 1 of each color of mana. And for 5, even though it was very specific and very diverse, in its cost, you got a 7/7 body. So that was well above rate for what you'd usually get for a 5 drop. And obviously, the formatting is a little awkward, counts as a sliver. But pay 2, put a sliver token creature into play, and it counts as a 1/1 colorless sliver. Some people used to use metallic slivers as tokens. That's not really accurate because the tokens weren't meant to be artifacts, they were just colorless slivers with no other abilities. But it was close enough for a lot of people, and we just kept that in mind. But this was a beast. That was a good sized body on any creature that you could get at the time. And that ability is very versatile, just to be able to spit out extra creatures with your extra mana. If you had other slivers kicking around that made them bigger or give them extra abilities, so much the better. Sliver Queen was definitely a tank and a beast and lived up to its name. And yeah, so these 6 augmented the 11, gave you a total of 17 slivers in the first generation of slivers. And you could make some fun decks with this. They usually weren't broken. There was usually always a way to interact, come back them, and you knew basically what to expect from slivers because the options weren't so unreasonable with the amount that are out there. Now, of course, they stuck to 2 blocks for type 2 or standard. So it was only the Eternal formats where you would get every sliver ever printed later, where you could get all kinds of crazy combos. But this was the starting point with Tempest and then Stronghold, and it was a good solid base, very flavorful. It's piqued a lot of interest. Again, the Sliver Queen was the only rare one, so most of them were fairly attainable. Even the special uncommon ones from Stronghold. Stronghold was a small set, which made them a little easier to find if you were buying packs. This was a really strong start to get people's interest in slivers. Story-wise, they sort of disappeared and went underground for a while after the invasion happened. You don't hear a whole lot about slivers until, well, let's flip this around and put the queen up top there for wave 1. The first generation of slivers. The second generation of slivers was even more contained, if you can believe it.
Doesn't want to sit.
And that came in Onslaught. So this is all the way 2003 before Slivers got a second wave. Hey, welcome, Wingweaver. Thanks for coming. So yeah, the first wave, like I said, with Tempest, started in 1997 into 1998 with Stronghold. Then they had to wait about 5 years for Onslaught.
I like that one.
Which was the second set of, Legions, which was the second set in the Onslaught block. We looked at Onslaught and how it foreshadowed Slivers a little bit last week, looking at the set. But Legions was a very unique set. Every card in the Legions set was a creature. If you weren't aware of that, it made it a very interesting set to block, very restrictive in some senses, but a lot of creatures with other interesting abilities. And so that really helped shape the game in some respects moving forward. And it really had a heavy tribal theme. So they brought back one of their infamous tribes. They had a story explanation. People from the Riptide Project digging out these relics of the past in terms of biological forms to study and try and resuscitate. So we had for blue here, each, by the way, for Onslaught, every color got a common sliver, an uncommon sliver, and a rare sliver. So, again, fairly easy to find, but you did get more powerful rare slivers being incorporated into the mix. Instead of just a common and an uncommon in each color, now we had a rare one as well, and the rares tended to be 3/3s, whereas commons typically were 1/1s and the uncommons 2/2s. The casting cost wasn't as strictly structured, though, as they were in Tempest. So it got a bit more flexibility, which could make curving a little bit easier. So the Mist Form Sliver, Illusion Sliver, 1/1 for 2. All slivers have pay 1. This creature's type becomes the creature type of your choice in addition to its other types until end of turn. This was more relevant when different lords and such for different creature types shared out to just all of that type of creature in play. So Goblin King, Lord of Atlantis, things like that, where you could piggyback off some of the cards your opponent played if they were in a tribe and were using cards like that.
How am I feeling? I'm still sick.
Who's blowing the horn in the background?
That's the TV.
Well, that's probably the TV. Never got turned down. Sorry about that. I think somebody left on some videos on YouTube of Mario Brothers gameplay or something.
It's Mario.
Yeah. Anyway, so Mistform Sliver, usually not one of the go-tos. I mean, there were some shenanigans you could pull with it, but a little bit harder to build around. Blue also got Shifting Slivers.
Oh,
Slivers can't be blocked except by slivers. Oh, you're okay. That could be it too. Yes. This sliver was very deadly. If this hit the table and your opponent wasn't playing slivers, all of a sudden, whoop, nothing can be blocked, and you could end the game very quickly. This became an incentive to throw a couple of slivers in your deck, even if you weren't playing slivers, just in case. Some of that did happen, but not too commonly. Usually there were other ways of answering and dealing with specific threats, but it was something people had to keep in mind.
In some ways, Becca.
The rare for blue was the Synapse Sliver. So here you got your 3/3 base body, costs 5 in this case. Whenever a sliver deals combat damage to a player, its controller may draw a card. So this is your different way to get some card advantage out of blue. And it's not just replacing slivers. You could actually, use a little evasion or whatnot and get something through and just get some extra card draws. Species XR17 feeds upon the mental energies of its victims. This explains why the goblins remain unaffected. Yes. Looking at all these different species. Once the last few slivers the Riptide Project controlled were dead, there was nothing to keep the island from becoming completely overrun. And taking the form of a junior researcher, the first sliver slipped out of Riptide. So it's starting to tell the tale of the escape of slivers from the Riptide Project. And how they got loose into the wild. Crypt Sliver. Now this is an interesting one because this one, I remember getting some heat. This is again just the second wave of slivers. And the black sliver in Tempest, remember, same casting cost, same side, also gave regenerate. Except it was pay 2 to regenerate, whereas this one is slivers have tap to regenerate target sliver. So you can tap a different sliver to regenerate this one, or vice versa, for any of your slivers. It was nice not to have to pay mana for that ability. So there was some variety there, but basically it was still a regenerating sliver. Usually I recall people building with both sets together would want to run a copy or two of each, just for different ways to play. Welcome, Alias. Spectral Sliver was the black's uncommon one. 2/2 for 3. All slivers have pay 2. This creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So this was sort of a shade sliver effect, and it was, as you recall the other two, they had gives pay 2 for +1/+0 or +0/+1 for red and white respectively. So black gets basically a more efficient +1/+1 for the same cost. So that was something that really caught a few people's attention. Yeah, it is nice art. Sure, I've seen Agents of the Cabal here and there. Well, not here. and certainly not in any of the Sliver labs. Oh dear, I've said too much. Yes. Death couldn't contain the Slivers. What made us think we could? Again, they're poor researchers. Toxin Sliver. I remember this one. My brother built a black-red Sliver deck in this era, and it was quite effective. 3/3, again, for the rare 3/3 Slivers, 4 was one of the more efficient costs you could find at the time. So if you're looking for a bigger body, whenever a Sliver deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature, it can't be regenerated. So this was sort of a death touch effect. A little bit different there with the can't be regenerated clause, but basically. It doesn't need to use its venom. It just needs to know it needs you to know it can. Again, this wasn't the real strength of the deck, but it was a nice tool for his toolbox. I'll give it that.
Becca's hubby's enjoying this.
Oh, glad to hear. Next, we get into red. Hunter Sliver. Provoke was a brand new ability at this time. It had been an instant, I think back in Stronghold, was it? But now they put it as a keyword ability that creatures could have. And this Sliver could share it around quite nicely, which made it quite a good way to introduce the ability anyway. Whenever a Sliver attacks, its controller may have target creature defending player controls untap and block if able. So you get the chance to choose how your opponent's going to block, even if their creatures are tapped. That doesn't prevent it. So it's a good way of getting rid of pesky creatures if your opponent has a Royal Assassin or a Birds of Paradise or something they usually don't want in combat. This can clear those out pretty effectively. Once they get the scent, there's no escape. And red got Blade Sliver. So the red Tempest 1, same casting cost, same size, but you had to pay 2 for each Sliver to give it +1/+0. And you could do that as many times as you wanted, but that was still a lot of mana. Whereas this is just all Slivers get an extra attack. So this could add up quite nicely. Not as nicely as the old Muscle Sliver, but still, being a different Sliver that boosted their stats was a nice addition. And again, it depended whether you were playing just with the Legion Slivers or if you were still combining the Tempest ones in as well. Well, this guy was very deadly. Again, 4, so fairly cheap for the 3/3s at the time for Slivers. All Slivers have tap. Target Sliver gets +X attack until end of turn, where X is the number of Slivers in play. You know, it didn't take a whole lot. If you had 4 or 5 Slivers on the board, and you could get one through and tap the rest to each give it, +4, +5 attack, you could kill someone off pretty quick. Or if you had more than that and could just, attack with half of them and keep the other half to pump up with, it was a way to keep some Slivers safe and also still make them very efficient in combat. This guy was very aggressive and very nice in that way. As malleable as molten steel, but as dangerous as the finished blade. Then we're into green. Green, unfortunately, like I said, was the build-around color in the first wave of Slivers. In Onslaught, green, like blue, I would argue, a little bit, although not, actually, I'd say a little worse than blue overall, didn't do quite as well. So you may play Quick Sliver anytime you could play an instant. So you can surprise with some pumps or something else. That is a nice option to have, but it usually just didn't come up that much. Yeah, and again, any player can do it, but the directors of the Riptide Project wanted instant results on their Sliver experiments. They got their wish. Root Sliver. Slivers cannot be countered. Sliver spells cannot be countered. Yeah. If you're coming up against a heavy counterspell control deck, this is handy. But otherwise, it's completely useless, and it's just a 2/2 Sliver for 4. Not that wonderful. So, sort of a sideboard niche type thing going on. Is power creep a thing in this game? It sure is. This was a period, though, of slowish power creep, to be honest, at the time between Tempest and Onslaught here. It was starting to show up in some of the creatures, and you can see that with the inclusion of the rare slivers and some very powerful abilities. But some of the old slivers were still the stronger ones at this point. The rare sliver for green, Brood Sliver. Again, it costs 5 for your 3/3. Whenever a sliver deals combat damage to a player, its controller may put a may put a 1/1 colorless sliver creature token into play. So this could multiply your sliver army very quickly. Often that was even more effective than the blue one, which let you draw more cards because you didn't have to pay for these. And if you had the other ones, like Magma Sliver, which ability got better with more slivers in play, this could still be a very strong effect. And if you had both this and the blue, then you got bodies and got the draw cards, which was even better. White I found to be a very strong color for slivers in Generation 2 here. It was the only one-cost sliver that was out at the time, except for Metallic Sliver, which didn't give any bonuses. So it's not the best bonus, but it's still given a bonus, and it's a stackable bonus. Like the Muscle Sliver, the more of these you get out, they're still adding to your sliver's overall strength, because each one on the table gives all your slivers an extra toughness. So yeah, white got the one drop to help you curve out a little quicker with your slivers, get more of them on the board quicker, and stackable. So that was a very good common. It's uncommon, Ward Sliver, the most expensive of the uncommons at 5, but a very strong ability. As it comes into play, choose a color. All slivers have protection from the chosen color. If your opponent's playing a one-color deck, and all of a sudden all your creatures on the board are protection from that one color, they are in some serious trouble unless they've got some colorless ways of holding back a bunch of creatures. Which there aren't a lot of. Most colorless ways of stopping a creature will stop a creature. But, yeah, this could certainly do some damage. And again, even if they're playing a multicolored deck where they've got 2 or 3 colors, if you bring out extra copies of these, they do have stacking abilities because you can pick a different color each time. So you could have protection from 2 or 3 colors. The first wave of slivers perished from the Riptide Wizard's magic. The second wave shrugged off their spells like water. They learn and adapt like the Borg. There you go. And then the rare sliver, a little cheaper than the uncommon for white here. Again, it's a 4-cost 3/3. Whenever a sliver deals damage, its controller gains that much life. So again, this is the precursor to the lifelink ability. The sliver would survive, even at the expense of every other creature on... The slivers would survive, even at the expense of every other creature on Terra. And that was all there was in Legions. 3 slivers for each color. And again, not really enough to build a deck around in one color, but you pick 2 or 3 colors strategically, put them together, you could make a decent little sliver deck. And if you were playing with both the Gen 1 slivers and the Gen 2 slivers, you could do something pretty good. There were starting to become enough to really make some threatening decks. I thought they might think power is a huge thing in all 3 TCG games, but it's why I like Pokemon. Yeah, Pokemon has power creep, but it's fair about it with its rotation. Yeah, Magic used to do rotations too. A lot of people just like being able to still play with the old cards. And again, Gen 2 was second last set was in was in Legions sorry, I'm wording this horribly. Legions was the second last set with the original card frame. And then the last set was Scourge. And in Scourge, they just included 1 sliver, as far as I recall. And it was, again, a rare that cost 1 of every color and was a 7/7. So again, this efficient body. Sliver Mutant Legend. The End of Evolution. And you can pay 3, search your library for a Sliver card, reveal that card, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your libraries. You can go tutor up whichever Slivers you need to help build your new hive. Or pay 3 and gain control of target Sliver if there were Slivers on the other side of the board for a mirror match. So this could get pretty ugly too, and this was your new Sliver boss, sort of paralleling the Sliver Queen from Gen 1 in Stronghold. And that was Gen 2, so 15 Slivers from Onslaught and 1, so 16 total in that block. Now, before we leave Gen 2, I should also note that they released some player reward tokens at this time. These were hard to get a hold of. I managed to acquire these sort of by fluke a little bit later. I'll talk about this guy too. And basically it's just, you know, the Sliver Queen or the Brood Sliver for green, the rare one, could create these. And it's just a colorless generic 1/1 Sliver token. Different from how tokens look nowadays. But they exist and they're out there. If you see them, they might be worth picking up. Most tokens aren't worth anything because they throw Pokemon. They throw token cards in almost every booster pack now. But at the time, I think the Anthologies box was the first thing I remember to really have creature tokens. Oh no, Unglued. Unglued had a bunch. That's the first printed tokens I remember was Unglued. But these were player reward 1. They included the Goblin and Pegasus tokens from Unglued into the Anthology box. And those didn't have printed stats on them. So that's just a note on Gen 2. Also, a side note, they used the last 4 sets, and recently they're up a new set each 2 months, or 1 month plus a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, originally, well, not originally. Once they settled into the block format, Magic used to get sort of a block a year where you would end the year with a big set and have 2 expansions to that big set during the following year. And sometimes they would work in a 4th set, like an unset or something that didn't fit the mold, like Cold Snap, so that you would get a set released every quarter. You know, and that was considered tons. Because I remember after Homeland's release, there was a huge gap where it was like 8 or 9 months or more before I got the next set that came out. But yeah, that was a more reasonable release schedule than what they do now. Now they've got double that releases most years. Anyway, Onslaught also featured this little guy, Mistform Ultimus. Again, a 3/3 for 4, interestingly. Illusion Legend. Mistform Ultimus is every creature type. And it may attack as though it weren't a wall, because walls were still special rules at the time. But basically, this is the precursor to Changelings. And this also appeared in Legions, along with the Mistform type stuff that was in Onslaught and Legions. So, Mistform Ultimus could be thrown into Sliver deck, or if your opponent happened to be playing Illusions and this guy, that could interact with them as well. So that's just another secondary note on things that were getting more interactive with Slivers at the time. So again, let's put the big boss one on top here for Gen 2. So Gen 1, Tempest and Stronghold. Gen 2, mostly Onslaught, just the one Scourge beastie thrown in to fill it. But like I said, mainly it was Onslaught. Slivers, my favorite commander deck. Yeah, I used to have a Sliver commander deck. It's pretty chaotic, and you never know quite what to expect out of those games. But they're definitely a sort of Voltron type, where the more you have, the stronger they get. And if you get wiped out and have to restart, it's a right pain to get built back up again. So there is definitely that. Now, Wave 3. Can you see the difference in the size of this pile? I think it's bigger than Gen 1 and Gen 2 combined. When they brought Slivers back for the third time, third generation, they did it in a very big way. And this was Time Spiral block.
Oh yeah, we opened a bunch of that, didn't we?
Not a ton. We opened some. This came at an interesting time in my life because I was just moving across the country at the time, and it was a set that recapped the past of the game as well as looking forward towards the future. And again, for all three of these blocks, there was a Legion's Precon deck as well. I don't remember much about that one. This was the Slivers Precon deck for Time Spiral. Sliver Evolution. Unlike the Tempest one, which was blue and black, this one is the other three colors, white, green, and red. And, yeah, why not? I'll go over it a little bit here before we go through what all they did in the whole block. But Time Spiral was an interesting block in general. Dominaria lies in ruin. It has survived more than a few cataclysms over the last few millennia. The detonation of the Golgothian Silex at Argoth, the disaster at the Tolarian Academy, the Phyrexian invasion, and the birth and death of Corona. These apocalypses have left Dominaria a toxic husk, almost devoid of vegetation. The shattered remains of forests and buildings punctuate the desolate landscape, but damage inflicted on the plane at the center of the multiverse is more than skin deep. Strange storms and shimmerings pass over the land, sometimes bringing with them flashes of Dominaria's ancient past. It's as though time itself has been shattered. Beings and places from across the plane's long history blink into existence, often disappearing as quickly as they appeared. Centuries have passed since the planeswalker Teferi took huge sections of the lands of Shiv and Zephyr out of phase and removed them from the fabric of reality to save them from the Phyrexian invaders. Teferi has a long time to ponder his actions, and now has decided it's time for those lands to return. But when he returns to Dominaria, he's immediately senses something is wrong. To his eye, it is as though the planar substance of Dominaria is clouded, fractured glass. Teferi and his lifelong friend Joria set out to discover what is wrong with Dominaria and what they must do to repair the plane and return for the return of Shiv. What they discover will change the multiverse forever. Yeah, so
you had a question from Anime Master.
Sliver Queen is expensive. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Only 2 major 5-cost 5-color slivers I need are Sliver Queen and Sliver Legion. Do you have those? Well, yes, we've already covered Sliver Queen, and we'll be getting to Sliver Legion in a minute. Tempest was a set that we rather enjoyed, and when it was still cheaper, opened a couple boxes of. Unfortunately, we didn't pull any Mox Diamonds, but we did pull Sliver Queens, so, you know.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
There we go. So when the Plane of Wrath overlaid Dominaria at the start of the Phyrexian invasion, it brought with it Volrath's stronghold and the huge Sliver Legion, Sliver Hide hidden in its lava tubes. A century later, the mages of the Riptide Project came across the remnants of the hive and magically recreated the Slivers. In search of a queen, the Slivers homed in on the Mirari, the infamous artifact that reflected the desires of whoever possessed it. Once the god Corona and the Mirari were gone, the Slivers slowly spread across Dominaria, always evolving, slowly building smaller, queenless pseudo-hives. Now they are like packs of bizarre wolves preying on the weak and old in Dominaria's desolate places. And again, they introduced time-shifted cards, which was interesting. Reprints, basically, that they inserted into Time Spiral boosters and precons. This was basically the first instance of the list, except these cards were totally tournament legal in the whatever cards you could play Time Spiral in. I don't think list cards are, like in the current modern format, whatever that is. But the first time they did them here as a separate list of insert cards, they were. You also had Suspend introduced, Split Second, which circumvented the stack, Flash as a keyword, and the Slivers returning. So this was a big deal and very nice for the return of Slivers and a bunch of old mechanics. Here's the Sliver Evolution deck list. Again, you got a little bit heavier white and green, but Gemstone Mine was quite a useful land from back in Weatherlight that came into play with 3 counters, and you could tap it for a mana of any color but use up a counter. Once the counters were gone, it was useless. But these saw a fair bit of use in decks that required, a variety in their mana. The introduction of Terramorphic Expanse. This was the first common fetch land they put out, as I recall. And the creatures you got in this deck: 2 two-headed Slivers, 3 Bone Splitter Slivers. We'll go over what all these do in a minute here. 2 Fury Slivers, 4 Gemhide Slivers, 1 Fungus Sliver, 2 Might Slivers, 3 Sidewinder Slivers, 3 Quilled, 3 Watcher, 1 Pulmonic, 2 Spined, and again with the little dagger there, that and the Gemstone Mine. These were the time-shifted reprints. Harmonic Sliver, 2 Vesnir Slivers. And you got also Avoid Fate, Strength in Numbers, Molder, and Spirit Loop. It wasn't a bad little deck. I used to have fun playing this. Yeah, this is just strategies and stuff for playing with the deck. But it does have a neat note at the bottom here, which I'll go over. Once you have some games under your belt, it's time for you and the deck to evolve. Ravnica dual lands like Temple Garden and Sacred Foundry will make it easier to play your Slivers. You can try including Time Spiral Slivers of a different color, like Psionic Sliver, or you can check out the awesome Slivers in Tempest, Stronghold, and Legions sets. So it goes and tells you where those Gen 1 and Gen 2 Slivers were, if you could still find packs around to add them to your Sliver deck, which I find is a really nice touch. And again, this third wave of Slivers, in terms of just number of Slivers available, I think more than doubled the card pool. Because, like I said, each of these waves was 17 Slivers and 16 Slivers. I haven't counted these, but yeah, I'm sure this is doubling that total just by looking at the size of the stacks here. More than doubling. I had this back in the day. Is this pre-con from like 2009? Yeah, well, Time Spiral the set came out in 2006, so a little bit before 2009. But yeah, that's when these were released. I was on a bit of a collecting kick at the time. Unfortunately, most of the sealed product that I bought at the time I've opened, but I did get a box of the Time Spiral Precons, opened one of each, opened a couple of the others over the years, but I still have at least one of each of the Time Spiral Precons sealed, so that's nice, and I'm glad I still have that. They're getting harder to find. They don't make stuff like that anymore. That's a great introductory product. Nowadays, if you want to get a starting deck, it's pretty much got to be a commander deck, and that's, 100 card singleton is just such a different way to build a deck than the standard 60 card decks where you could have up to 4 of a card. Personally, I prefer this type myself. Anyway, black. So for the first set in the block, and again, all 3 sets in Time Spiral block had Slivers in it. That was another difference between Wave 3 and Wave 1 had 2 sets that had Slivers. Wave 2 was mainly Legions with 1 card from the following set. But when they got to Time Spiral, the whole block was Sliver heavy. So each one got 2 commons, 1 uncommon, and 1 rare for each color. So 4 for each color, unlike 2 in Tempest or 3 in Onslaught. And that's before you factor in the multicolor Slivers. So, okay, not the one I was thinking of. The one I was thinking of has a sliver symbol, and all the slivers were foiled. Ah, yes. What you're referring to then was, what were those called? There was a premium deck series that they came out with. One was like Fire and Lightning, where it was all foils. Another one was Slivers. They did a sliver one of those.
Hey, Marble, how are you?
But yeah, there was a premium deck series that must be what you're referring to. Oh, welcome, MRBL. So Black got Mindlash Sliver. So again, they're starting to become easier to find slivers that only cost one, so you can start building your sliver horde on the first turn. This one has all slivers have pay one, sacrifice this creature, each player discards a card. So not quite as strong as forcing your opponent to discard, but still, it was an option, and it was a 1/1 sliver for one. That was the main drawback to this. Though Dominaria's queenless slivers lack a single purpose, in some, the instinct for self-sacrifice remains extremely strong. And again, up till this point, it still remembered the influence of the Sliver Queen. That seems to diminish over time, and they don't talk about that as much anymore, probably because it's on the reserve list and they can't reprint it. Anyway, Basil Sliver. So this is a take on Basil's thralls from back in Fallen Empires. Fascinating. These creatures display the paradox of tenacity and purpose self-destruction I have sought to breed into my thralls. Endrick Shikar, Master Breeder. All slivers have sacrificed this creature to add 2 black mana to your mana pool. Now, this is an interesting ability because it can combo quite nicely with the Sliver Queen. If you can sacrifice any sliver to get 2 mana, which you can then use to create a new sliver. You can set up quite the little loop going there. Or anytime one of your creature slivers dies, replace it, albeit whatever you're replacing it with probably isn't adding to your abilities. But that is an interesting little combo piece potential. As well as being able to use them to ramp into something that costs more. Vampiric Sliver, 3/3 for 4. For an uncommon, first time that body size had been available in an uncommon. All slivers have, whenever a creature is dealt damage by this creature, this turn is put into a graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So that's the old Singir Vampire ability, but now all your slivers get it. It's not the strongest ability, but it can be relevant, especially when you get the ability for your slivers to spit at things. But I think that came a bit later, or was tricky to use in this set. Once we get there, we'll see what you mean.
StarCraft now.
Plague Sliver. Now this, I probably should have saved black for closer towards the end of Gen 3 here. But Plague Sliver was a take off of Jazam Djinn. They took Jazam Djinn, they made it a sliver, and they made it give its ability to all slivers. So it's a 5/5 for 4. All slivers have at the beginning of your upkeep, this creature deals 1 damage to you. If all you're doing is playing a Plague Sliver, then it's basically like a Jazam Djinn, which at this time wasn't as impressive as it once was, but is still a beast of a body with a manageable downside. However, if you're playing a lot of slivers, this is going to hurt you a lot. And this was the anti-sliver. This is the sliver you wanted to throw in your deck just in case your opponent was playing slivers. Or if you knew your opponent was going to be playing slivers, all of a sudden, all their slivers got very painful. Yeah, it was interesting, and it was the only one like this at the time. There's another one that'll come up shortly, which has sort of a double-sided effect, which could be played in a similar fashion if your opponent was playing slivers, but this one was the one for that sort of thing. Blue got Screeching Sliver, so again, a 1-drop sliver. All slivers have tap it, target player puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So I think that's called Milling One now. What wears down my people the most, I think, is not the danger, but the endless screeching outside our camp. And did this have Slivers share everything with its hive, even its afflictions? Shadow Sliver. Shadow creatures are another callback to Tempest Block. So this was sort of a double callback in that way. 1/1 for 3, a little bit on the smaller side, but all creatures have shadow. They can only be blocked, or they can be blocked only by creatures with shadow, is very nice. So that other shifting sliver, this was pretty much just as good, but it cost 1 less for being 1/1 instead of 2/2. Still very impactful if all your slivers become unblockable, and now you've got multiple ways you can do that. The slivers trapped between worlds since the Wrathy overlay are among the last to claim direct lineage from the lost Sliver Queen. And then you've got Telekinetic Sliver, 2/2 for 4. All slivers have tap to tap target permanent. So you could lock down whatever is going to be troublesome for your opponent for blockers or whatever. This could be very annoying in a couple of different combo decks, to be honest. But obviously you need to have a fair number of slivers to really make use of it. But it was definitely an interesting tactical tool to add to the slivers toolbox. Slivers are guided only by simple instinct. Advance the hive and you will be welcomed. Impede the hive and you will face unrelenting opposition for these. The Psionic Sliver was the blue rare, 2/2 for 5. All slivers have tap. This creature deals 2 damage to target creature or player and 3 damage to itself. So this is the same casting cost and size and ability that it gives as the old Psionic Entity had from way back in Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, Revised, 4th Edition, whatever. Psionic Entity was around for a long time. And in order to make good use of it, you usually had to put something like a Holy Strength or a Holy Armor on it to give it enough toughness so that it wouldn't kill itself with its 3 damage. Same thing goes for slivers here. You want a sliver that'll pump your toughness or your overall size, or give you protection from, whatever color it happens to be, to keep that from happening. That said, this is a way to tap to deal damage to target creature or player, so you could use this with Vampiric Sliver to grow your slivers as well, once you got that going. It was an interesting one. Again, on its own, you need something to work with so the slivers don't just start killing themselves, but it is definitely one that could be used to good effect if you could find the right other slivers to combo with. They evolved the ability to concentrate their neural activities into a single pulse, causing a disruptive but usually suicidal blast of psionic energy. Welcome back, Becca. Now we're into white, the Sidewinder Sliver. All slivers have flanking, and again, flanking came in from the Mirage block, so they brought back all kinds of abilities in Time Spiral block. That's why it made it such a fun set. And it landed just at the time that I was moving out here to Alberta from Ontario for the first time. So that made it memorable for that reason as well, in terms of sort of a change in life state and circumstance for me. So when I was still very much into the game,
you married me and everything changed.
Well, life changes in general, but it was a transitional time, and it was certainly a transitional set. Again, as you can tell from the insert we just read through, or referenced Ravnica. Ravnica was another one of the early sets, along with Mirrodin, after the border change and everything too. So, well, I guess that was a couple of years down the road, I should say. It wasn't that new a change at this point, but Kamigawa had been in there too. There's been a few. Anyway, whatever. Getting distracted. They encircled our patrol with the stealth and snares of corralling us like livestock. So again, another 1-drop for white. So white could play with these and plated slivers if you, didn't care about being type 2 legal or whatever. And you had 8 potential 1-drops in white. So that was good if you were trying to curve your slivers. Flanking doesn't stack like +1 toughness does, but if you just have one of one or the other, it's probably a little bit better for combat purposes. Watcher Sliver was very nice. 2/2 for 4 isn't bad, and all slivers get +2 toughness. So basically it was a 2/4 for 4 that buffed all your toughness of your slivers. This was a good one to have a couple kicking around for sure, and especially comboed nicely with things like that psionic sliver again. So I have spied them, wandering and watching, but for what? I fear they watch for us. And then we also got Quilled Sliver in white. Again, this is our commons, 2 common slivers, 1 common, uncommon sliver, and 1 rare. Just like each of the color ones. This one, you get a 1/1 for 2. All slivers have tap. This creature deals 1 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. Again, could combo with things like the Vampiric Sliver, or the Toxin Sliver from back in the previous Gen 2 that likes killing things by dealing damage to them. And then, is there a fun quote on this one? They have long kept us under attack, but we do not lack for ammunition. The very bodies of our foes arm us against them. And then the Pulmonic Sliver. Here's where you started to get, again, some recycling of abilities. 3/3 for 5. All slivers have flying. Now, before you could get in blue a 1/1 for 2 that gave all slivers flying.
Oh.
This does the same thing, but at least has an extra ability. Flanking does stack. Okay. See, I remember back in Mirage, they had a couple of captains who had flanking, and then you could pay to give the flanking effect a second time. I wasn't aware the flanking keyword itself stacked. But that may be something that they have updated, or maybe I just misunderstood and it did give it a second instant of flanking, but I'm pretty sure it was worded differently, that it gave the effect a second time. In any case, rules change, and I could be out of date on that. Thank you for updating me.
You sound like kind of like.
Well, I fully admit to being out of date on a lot of this stuff. Anyway.
No, yeah, I know.
But that one does go back a while, and so it may have changed, or I may just be misremembering. Either way, thanks for the correction. So yeah, it also adds, if this creature would be put into a graveyard, you may put it on top of its owner's library instead. So sort of this one was combining the blue effect from the Flying Sliver from Gen 1 and the Hibernation Sliver kinda from Gen 1 as well, where you could pay to bounce a sliver to your hand. This one put them on top of your deck, but you didn't have to pay to do it. So it was an interesting combination anyway. Gemhide Sliver. Green with this one returned to its glory. Green in Gen 2 for slivers, they took a major hit, but with this one, they were right back as being a prime candidate for building a sliver deck around. All slivers have tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. This would instantly solve your color fixing for any sliver deck. You could then play any other sliver much more easily. Also ramping. Gemhide Sliver is an amazing card to get your slivers really churning out the extra bodies you need. Yeah, it's hard to say which you'd rather have. I'd say Gemhide Sliver even outshines Muscle Sliver in that regard, although its ability doesn't stack like +1/+1 does. It's just so useful in getting your slivers going. The land is weary, even Sky Shroud is depleted. We must find another source of mana, one that is growing despite our withering world. There you go.
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry.
Then we got the Spinneret Sliver, 2/2 for 2. All slivers have this creature can block as though it had flying, so you gain the spider ability. Not great, but not bad. It's nice to have another way to defend against flying other than gaining flying or being able to deal damage by tapping. Each new generation of slivers evolves to assimilate the strengths and the prey upon which their progenitors fled. Again, if you were playing a draft, it's a common sliver, you would snap these up. If you were doing constructed, you could find better slivers to grab for your deck almost always. If you really want for variety, you might throw one in. Again, if you're doing a commander deck, that might be an option too. Might Sliver is an uncommon. This was a big boy. Again, green was known for the muscle sliver. Might Sliver was the brutish version of that. 5 is a lot. Starts at 2/2, but automatically all slivers get +2/+2. That's including itself. So, yeah, all your slivers become much more of a threat with this on the board. The colossal thing rumbled over the ridge, tree husks crumbling before it. The ones we were already fighting howled as it came, their muscles suddenly surging, and we knew it was time to flee. It does make a big board impact if you've got some slivers already set up before this lands. Next, we got Fungus Sliver, another one to help your slivers grow. All slivers have, whenever this creature is dealt damage, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So, sort of like the Vampiric Sliver, except this is not for damaging opponents' creatures, but for or killing them, but for your sliver taking damage and living. So, again, with the Quilled Sliver, you could combo that off quite nicely to make your slivers encourage each other's growth, let's say. But again, usually not the most efficient way to go. Usually you could find a combo that would more directly harm your opponent than just making your guys bigger. When a sliver of this breed enters the hive, the others claw each other in frenzied fits, thereby ensuing their rapid growth. And again, this is all the rare ones, I think, were reprinted forms of existing cards. So this one was Fungusaur, made into a sliver, basically. Two-headed sliver. Now this one's got a little bit of history to it, too. There weren't a whole lot of two-headed creatures throughout Magic's history up to this point, and there probably still aren't a whole lot. All slivers have this creature cannot be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. If you look at the first two-headed creature that they came out with, was Two-Headed Giant of Pharos. I'm probably mispronouncing that last word, but it was in Alpha, Beta, Unlimited. It was a 4/4 for 5 with trample, and it could block 2 creatures. That was its main shtick. And then they came out with Two-Headed Dragon in Mercadian Mask, which could block 2 creatures, or required 2 creatures to block it. So it was evasive with flying and needed double blockers. And then this takes off the second half of the ability more than the first. So if you compare this with the first two-headed, the comparison of where the ability came from isn't obvious, but you need that second step. Hubby has used this card before. Yeah. This one can certainly be useful. Because it can help your slivers to get through. And then once you have slivers getting through, like I said, with the Magma Sliver or some other tricks, you can really make that effective. And again, it's a fairly cheap sliver to build up your forces with. That which would be a fatal mutation in any other species, is merely a source of new powers. I am intrigued, yet too fearful to examine it more closely. Bone Splitter Sliver. So this is the counterpart of the white one that gives +2 toughness. This one gives +2 attack. And again, it's a 2/2 for 4. And a common. So again, a great one to grab in draft, or also useful for putting some pressure on your opponent in a sliver deck. As the time stream grew more and more unstable, Dominaria's creatures struggled to adapt. The intense pressures led many dead led to many dead ends, but also to lethal new forms that appeared as suddenly as the ashen rains. And then Fury Sliver. All Slivers have double strike. Double strike was still a fairly new ability at this time, I believe. 3/3 for 6. This was one of the most expensive Slivers printed to date at this time, here in Gen 3 of Slivers. And yeah, later they made this ability a little easier to get, because 6 is a lot to pay for a Sliver, especially one that could be lightning bolted depending on what else is around. A rift opened and our arrows were abruptly stilled. To move was to push the world, but the Sliver's claw still twitched. Red wounds appeared in Thed's chest, and ribbons of blood hung in the air. So yeah, very quick. The whole double strike ability, though, is fairly strong, and just being able to share it around, yeah, this can make your force quite lethal quite quickly too. So okay, yeah, and by this time I should have mentioned before, again with the Tempest Gen 1 Slivers, there were no foils back then. There were foils by the time you got to Onslaught Block, or not, yeah, Onslaught Block, where Legions featured most of those Slivers, so you could find them in foils, and of course, you know, ever since then, foils have been an ongoing thing. So good old Sedge Troll became Sedge Sliver for this one, for the red rare. 2/2 for 2. All Slivers have this creature gets +1/+1 as long as you control a swamp, and pay 1 black to regenerate this creature. So nice double effect, but you got to be having some swamps around. So playing the right color combination and making sure, you know, again, in the right deck, very nice double ability Sliver, but it does need the right deck in order to function because of that swamp clause. Their flesh is as sodden as the fens which they live, oozing to fill any wound and squishing to absorb any blow. Then we're into the allied colored multicolor Slivers. So, like I said, each color got 4, 2 commons, 1 uncommon, 1 rare in Time Spiral set itself. And then there were 5 multicolor cards, 1 for each allied combination. So that's 20, 25, 26 Slivers in Time Spiral itself. And then the other 2 sets in the block both contained extra Slivers to flush that out even further. And these ones were based off of, not exact one-to-one, but inspired by certain enchantments, I believe, entirely or mostly. That they now got a Sliver version. So Aura Shards, I think, was the original enchantment from back in Invasion for this one. And so for that same cost, it was an enchantment, but now it's a 1/1 creature, and all Slivers have, when this creature comes into play, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Aura Shards is whenever any creature comes into play, destroy target artifact or enchantment, or whenever you play a creature, I guess. Anyway, so again, if you're not relying on artifacts or enchantments in your Sliver deck, this could be great value, and I think this even saw some tournament play just as a sideboard card, as a body that could get rid of artifacts or enchantments when it entered play for a time. There's better ways to do that now. Ghost Flame Sliver. This one dates back to Ice Age, the enchantment that it's based off of. All Slivers are colorless. 2/2 for 2. Not a wonderful ability, but it gets around things like circles of protection and things which stop particular colors, or, you know, protection from colors or whatever. So it could be used to circumvent some of those color-based strategies. Next we got Dementia Sliver. All Slivers have tap it, name a card, Target opponent reveals a card at random from his or her hand. If it's the named card, that player discards it. Play this ability only during your turn. So yeah, you gotta play a bit of a guessing game, but once you know what's in their hand, you can thin out their hand pretty quick if you don't mind tapping a bunch of slivers. 3/3 for 5. And then we've got Opaline Sliver. A blue, a white, and 1 for a 2/2. All slivers have whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell an opponent controls, you may draw a card. I think this was based off of Reparations, if I recall. And then there's one which I couldn't find. The red-green multicolor sliver from Time Spiral. I think it was based off Fires of Yevamaya, if I recall. So again, it gave haste, and you could sacrifice to give +2/+2. I forget the exact details on that. I could be muffing that one. I should have dug a little deeper to make sure I found one. I love the red-green show. Yes, that is fun too. But yeah, for some reason I couldn't find the red-green sliver from Time Spiral. And then, like Metallic Sliver, you got a artifact sliver that doesn't provide any abilities, but is just an artifact creature sliver. 5 cost this time for a 3/3 instead of a 1-drop 1/1. So yeah, Metallic Sliver I think fills this role much better than this poor one. Vesner admired his handiwork and smiled. His first prototype had joined with the hive mind all too well, running with the brood and becoming a predator itself. This one, he thought, would be accepted into the hive, but still obey his commands. So yeah, and that was Time Spiral, the set. But again, being a block, you had Time Spiral, Plane Chase, and Planar Chaos. Sorry, Time Spiral, Planar Chaos, Future Sight were the 3 sets in the block, and so Planar Chaos. Sounds right. I think it was gain haste and pay 1 to sacrifice to give +2/+2. Yeah, I just don't know where any of mine are. I'm sure I have one sitting around somewhere.
Becca keeps saying hi to Dave.
Yep.
Dave does not engage.
That's okay. But we're all happy to see Dave.
Yes.
Reflex Sliver. So this one was basically another time where they're starting to get more repeat abilities. So before you had Heart Sliver in red, a 1/1 for 2 that gave all slivers are unaffected by summoning sickness. It's now keyworded to haste, and they give it to green on a 2/2 for 4. So it costs twice as much, a little bit bigger. You know, I guess it's a different color, so you've got it as an option in different colors now. But honestly, I think the red one for cheaper was the better option if you're just straight up comparing the two. But still, it was another common sliver available. Each color got a common sliver in this set, and one got 2, and we'll get to that color and why in a second. Plus, again, there were some more multicolor slivers here, which we'll get to in a second in Planar Chaos as well.
Becca, I'm gonna cry. Well, she's joking.
Yeah, so again, Battering Sliver. Again, they doubled the cost, doubled the size from the Green Tempest Gen 1 Sliver. The not muscle, Horn Sliver that gave Trample. So now Red can give Trample as well, but it's on a much bigger, more expensive body. Honestly, if you're going to pay 6 for even though it's a 4/4, I'd rather take the 3/3 double strike than 4/4 for Trample, usually, even on a draft.
That Battering Sliver is one of hubby's favorites.
Okay. It is a bigger body than you usually see on slivers, but it's honestly not one of my favorites, but trample can be useful for sure, depending on how your deck is built. I would just prefer to get it from a 3-cost sliver rather than a 6-cost. Blue gets synchronous sliver, which is a 3/3 for 5. All slivers have vigilance. I'm trying to remember, was this the first time slivers got vigilance?
I don't know.
I think it might have been. I think so. So that was a potentially useful addition, for sure. But 5 cost is pretty high. With a twitch of its muscles, its timeline forks. Then just as quickly, its two selves reintegrate. Causality, strangely, seems not to mind. Covered with a thick, hard shell-like plates, these slivers burrow through solid rock to carve out new nests for their hives. And this one, the sliver comes into the world a perfect predator. It's ready to hunt and devour its first meal within seconds of hatching. I do like the flavor text on one of these. Spitting sliver. All slivers have first strike.
I don't bite, babe.
This one's a 5 cost again for a 3/3. All slivers have first strike. So Talon Sliver in white could do this for 2 mana for a 1/1. It is interesting that so many of these have these recurring abilities from Gen 1 just on bigger, more expensive bodies. Our lance's reach had been our saving grace in our fight against the hive. Now even that advantage had been taken from us. So again, that's pretty recurring as well. And then Poultice Sliver. This one was very disappointing. 3, it's a, more affordable body for sure for a 2/2, and all slivers have pay 2, tap, and regenerate target sliver. So this combines the 2 black slivers from Gen 1 and Gen 2. One you could pay 2 to regenerate target sliver, and the other you could tap a sliver to regenerate target sliver. This you have to do both. You have to pay 2 and tap it to regenerate target sliver. So it's weaker than either of them. But it is a, slightly bigger body again. So there's that. But I remember it just being disappointing. I mean, regenerating is a solid ability, and if you weren't running black, this is a way to get it in white. So, there is that. But the costs, having to do both costs of tapping and paying 2, was somewhat irksome. And this is why, in Plein Air Chaos, white got 2 common slivers. Because one of them, if you recognize the white naming plate, in this set at least, indicated this was a color-shifted card. So Time Spiral had time-shifted cards with the old borders that they reprinted, on that second sheet. This was a little bit different, but basically they took existing cards in this set and reprinted another version of them, exactly the same effects and size and all that, but in a different color. So Muscle Sliver got reprinted into white as Sinew Sliver. So now white had access to its own Muscle Sliver version. 2 cost for a 1/1. All slivers get +1/+1, now in white. And of course, if you're playing white-green, you could run both of them if you wanted to. And that created even more hive pumping madness. Very solid addition to the hive. As the muscle cords of the creatures twitched, Hannah saw an unsettling unanimity in the other's rippling flesh. She didn't know what it meant, but she urged to say to keep the ship at a safe distance. So yeah, I think still to this day, muscle slivers and sinew slivers are some of the more efficient ways to make your guys a little stronger. But yeah, there's a lot of well-known cards that got this treatment in Plein Air Chaos. So, for example, Giant Growth in green became I think it was at Brute Force in Red. So Red got its own version of Giant Growth. There was a bunch of cards like that. Prodigal Sorcerer became Prodigal Pyromancer. So Red got a Tim that was basically just a reskin Prodigal Sorcerer. There was a whole pile of them. I'm not going to go through them all, but this was a recurring theme in the set, and it was a fun one to play with because they were usually cards which were fairly popular in their original version too, and having a second color get access to them was often quite interesting, although not usually completely color breaking. It was a little unexpected anyway. Next, we're into the enemy color multicolors for 2 colors. So here we have Cautery Sliver. 2/2 for 2 with white and red. All slivers have pay 1, sacrifice this creature. This creature deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Or all slivers have pay 1, sacrifice this creature, prevent the next 1 damage that would be dealt to target sliver or player this turn. So this basically was a somewhat watered down version because, of course, it had to share it to all of the slivers, and if they had done the original, it wouldn't have been fair. Version of Goblin Legionnaire, which was a 2/2 for the same cost. Goblin Soldier, I believe. And that one you could pay and sacrifice it to do 2 damage to target creature or player, or to prevent 2 damage to target creature or player. So, yeah, they brought it down to 1 damage or 1 prevention, because otherwise, if all of a sudden all your slivers could be flung at your opponent's face for 2 damage each, that would be a little too strong. But yeah, that's what the card this was originally based off of anyways.
Yay, I got another fly.
Necrotic Sliver. A black, a white, and 1 for a 2/2. All slivers have pay 3, sacrifice this creature, destroy target permanent. So this was the Vindicate on a stick sliver that gave all your slivers the chance to become Vindicates and destroy target permanent.
That's kind of a neat art.
It is. Though Volroth is long dead, the slivers have become everything he wanted them to be. Mindless instruments of destruction and despair. Frenetic Sliver was Frenetic Efreet, I believe. 2/2 for 3. All slivers have pay 0. If this creature is in play, flip a coin. If you win the flip, remove this creature from the game and return it to play under its owner's control at end of turn. If you lose the flip, sacrifice it. So, it'll 50-50 shot of either killing itself or basically blinking itself out until end of turn. So anytime one of your slivers was going to be killed, you had a 50-50 chance of saving it. Again, useful if your opponent plays a big board wipe. You might save, statistically about half your slivers randomly. Or even against spot removal, you might be able to avoid it that way. But again, being random, I don't remember this one being super popular, but people would sometimes throw one in because it can be useful in some circumstances to keep your force going a bit. Dormant Sliver. Now this one is another one of those double-edged types. So for a blue, a green, and 2, 4 cost, you get a 2/2. All slivers have Defender, which means they can't attack. So if your opponent's building up a huge sliver force that's just planning on attacking you to win, you drop this one, and all of a sudden you're safe because they can't attack you as long as this is in play. But it also gives, and when this creature comes into play, draw a card. So this one, you play a sliver, you draw a card. You play a sliver, you draw a card. It could help you really churn out a big force, and then you would need a sacrifice outlet. And there's lots of slivers that let you sacrifice a sliver to do something, to off this guy after you've used it to build up a big force, and then you can just plow on through. But it did have that double-edged sword element, which meant as long as it was in play, you couldn't attack. But that was a strong ability. Hubby said he used Dormant Sliver before. Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's potentially quite strong, but you do have to have, when you build with it in mind, a way to clear it out when you don't want it stopping you up anymore. It triggers the hive's period of etheric fertility, a time when even feeding is a lower priority than reproduction. There you go. Next, we've got Darkheart Sliver. This one's based off of Darkheart of the Woods from the Dark, one of the early multicolor cards, which let you sacrifice a force to gain 2 life. Well, this is all slivers have sacrificed this creature, you gain 3 life. And it's a 2/2 body for 2, which is, again, fairly efficient. And green-black can be a fairly aggressive combo. This is a way to keep you alive if you're getting in a tight matchup there with your aggression. Slivers scares me. Yeah, again, some people love them, some people hate them, but they're definitely interesting with all that ability sharing. Very snowbally type creature type, which you can get a lot of crazy stuff going. And that was it for Planar Chaos. Again, 1 for each color, except with the extra in white, and then the 5 enemy color multicolors. So there's another 11 slivers added to the pile from Time Spiral.
You got a new person commenting?
Yep.
You saw it already?
Then we're into Future Sight. And again, Future Sight, 1 for each color at common, and then the rare, the Sliver Legion, which we'll get to in a minute.
I think you played a Sliver deck against me once in a while.
Oh, yeah, I used to have a couple Sliver decks. It was a favorite creature type of mine for a while, but to be honest, I haven't used them in a while. And I've fallen a little bit behind the times. Generation 3 of Slivers was the last time I really kept up with them. And that block, like I said, was a lot to keep up with because they were in every set in the block. Virulent Sliver here. All slivers have Poisonous 1. This is back before the days of Infect, when poison counters were a lot harder to deal with. But this actually had potential, because again, it was a 1-cost sliver. And again, Future Sight had these future format frames, which I don't know if I'm assuming they probably used somewhere else since, but they never became popular and replaced the frames in general. I think this symbol up here was meant to indicate creature. And there's your casting costs along the side, so that if you're holding cards in your hand, you could see your casting costs more easily, type thing. Yeah, all slivers have Poisonous 1. Whenever a sliver deals combat damage to a player, that player gets a poison counter, and a player with 10 or more poison counters loses the game. So it's all of a sudden a lot easier if you've got, all your slivers can do it. Even if they are lower power, it gives you an alternate condition, but it was still tied to, they have to do damage and give a poison counter, so you're still sort of killing in 2 ways, whereas in fact it was instead. So there's that. And again, with the green, this might remind you of other cards from the set, like Arbor Dryad or Tarmogoyf, which just helps remind of the power creep going on by this time in creature design. Homing Sliver. This one definitely saw some use, as I recall. Each Sliver card in each player's hand has Sliver Cycling 3, and it's got Sliver Cycling 3. Pay 3 and discard this card. Search your library for a Sliver card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Then shuffle your library. So this was basically a Sliver Tutor, which, tutors are always fun. Or it's just a 2/2 body for 3, but and it would give all your others. So if you get, again, slivers with double abilities that aren't going to give you great value because it's a repeat ability that doesn't stack, you could cycle it and go get something else of your choice. So pretty neat to have as an option. Not the most efficient if you're trying to be quick in building up a force, but certainly helps you find important ones. Poison goes crazy sometimes. It sure does. Next, we've got Mesmeric Sliver. For blue, costs 4, a blue and 3.
That just looks weird.
It does. Not my favorite art for the Slivers.
No.
All Slivers have, when this permanent comes into play, you may Fate Seal 1. I don't think Fate Seal ever really took off as an ability. Its controller looks at the top card of an opponent's library. He or she may put that card on the bottom of that library. So yeah, you get to manipulate what your opponent draws to a small degree whenever you play a Sliver. 2/2 for 4. I don't remember it being particularly huge. It was actually very good. Day. Sorry, yeah. Frenzied Sliver. 2 for a 1/1. All Sliver creatures have Frenzy 1. Whenever a Sliver attacks and isn't blocked, it gets +1/+0, until end of turn. The Atruran conjurers took the strange alien fossil and partnered their own twisted creations in its image. So there's the black feature side. Again, this is, again, +1.
Hold down the fort, Becca.
Attack when it's attacking and not blocked. It's pretty narrow. I don't remember it being that popular. Lymph Sliver is interesting. All Slivers have Absorb 1. If a source would deal damage to a Sliver, prevent 1 of that damage. So it's sort of like an extra toughness. But a little bit more wider ranging. And costs 5 for a 3/3 with it. Just a little too expensive for the ability too, but was sort of interesting. Its skin remains in a flowing liquid state that keeps its body coated with potent restorative lymph. Kind of gross, but that's what it is. I don't remember within the block itself most of the Slivers being that great, except for the Sliver Legion here, which was the rare one from Future Sight. And again, 1 of each color for a 7/7 was becoming the standard for a Sliver Legendary Lord at the time. Still no Sliver Queen, but all Slivers get +1/+1 for each other Sliver in play. So basically, this was a Sliver coat of arms. Hidden within the clicking, chittering swarm is a unique mind, still young, but growing more aware as time passes. And yeah, there's the Sliver Legion. So there we have our 3 lords there. The Sliver Queen, the original. Sliver Overlord, in case of mirror matches, basically. Or the Sliver Legion for just more brute strength. And like I say, this Gen 3 doubled the total options you had available, basically. It's a massive wave of Slivers in that generation. And all of a sudden now you had all kinds of tools to build all kinds of different Sliver decks. And they got more and more unpredictable. And that's where my personal experience building Sliver decks starts to run down, because while they came up with a bunch of tools later, and I did enjoy using Aether Vials and such with them. Here, I'll just show you some of the cards I've got left over in this box with extra Slivers that I used in some of my Sliver decks. And then we'll talk briefly about the next wave, the 4th wave that I saw, although I don't have as many to show from it. But here are some cards I used to like. Again, I'd play like a 5-color commander deck or various other combo decks with Slivers. This is just some acceleration stuff. Oh, the Genjus, they were fun. But towards the back here, we got these old triple lands. Used to be quite popular. I don't see them around much anymore, but the layers that could tap for 3 colors of mana, and the downside was actually quite manageable. When it comes into play, sacrifice it unless you return a non-layer land you control to owner's hand. So if you didn't have too many of these in your deck, you could run a couple, play out your other land first, and then once you were out of lands, play this. You could tap your other land before it left play, then tap this for its use, and on your next turn you had another land drop ready to go. Usually, it didn't slow you down that much, but it was great for fixing. Here's those gemstone mines. Like I said, you got one time shifted in that pre-constructed deck, and originally they were in Weatherlight. These used to be quite popular. Now they've made gemstone caverns, which is, even more ridiculous, but these were strong at the time. Aether vials, a lot of 2-cost slivers or 3-cost slivers that Aether vial could be quite nice with. And I didn't grab quite enough out of that stack. After the Aether vials, I did have a command tower, Ristic Study. These are both out of a commander, or no, some of them were out of commander deck. Oblivion Ring was handy, Prophetic Bolt. These are all good little handy things I found for an all-color deck, which most of the Sliver decks were, because you had all these lovely all-color lords to choose from. Protective Sphere, protection from whatever color you had. Draw a card for each basic land type. Legacy Weapon. I had a nice shiny one. Remove target permanent from the game for one of each color.
Oh, the dog.
Yes, poor dog. Felwar Stone's always good. Heartstone combo's nice with Sliver Queen. Then we're into more slivers. Anyway, so that's my little intermission. Let's talk about Gen 4 briefly. This was my main focus. This was my main... Grew up playing with Slivers. Remember their introduction Wave 1, the massive edition in Wave 2, and then the even more massive edition in Wave 3. But they didn't stop there, and I don't even know how many generations there have been now. But M14 was a critical year. This counts as a sliver. It's the new version of, I guess, Mishra's Factory, sort of at the time. Becomes a 2/2 creature with all creature types until end of turn. And again, they were starting to do more ever since Lorwyn with changelings and things. Cavern of Souls. This is more recent again. Choose a creature type, and you can tap it for a mana of any color, and the spells can't be countered. So this replaces the need to run that other sliver that makes your guys can't be counter the root sliver. Never mind the prices, it's old. Anyway, those were 2 more cards that were useful for Sliver deck building. I'll just set them off to the side. If I get into Magic, I might try and play with Slivers. There's a lot that you can do with them. Most of them are commons, so they're not too expensive to pick up. They are interesting, and they're unique. One of the few creature types that, most of the things in Magic are Minotaurs or Goblins or Elves or, well-known fantasy types that have just been adapted. Slivers are one of the ones that they sort of invented themselves, which I can appreciate on that level anyway. There are a couple of others, but not many. Slivers are one of the better known. So you got Striking Sliver here, 1/1. Slivers you control have first strike. So again, they've had first strike slivers before, but this is by far the cheapest. Well, I guess 2 cost for white for Talon Sliver in Gen 1 wasn't too bad. But again, being able to get it for 1 cost on your red. Again, it gets, if you do play a sliver that gives double strike, that gets obsoleted by double strike. But Barry, do you have Hive Overlord? I don't think I have any of the later. They continued to make ones that cost 1 of each color, but some of them were 5/5s instead of 7/7s and whatnot later. And like I said, after this point, my collection thins out substantially. So I have some here from M14 where they brought back the slivers, but not nearly all of them. And no, I don't think I have any of the other multicolor lords. I am aware that some of them can be quite strong. I think they made one that gives all slivers indestructible or something crazy like that. So you never know. But this is another important difference that after this point threw me a little bit. Sliver creatures you control have first strike. So that's the distinct difference. Every sliver up until this point, in the first 3 generations, gave all slivers whatever the ability is. Now, they start redoing the slivers, but it's only sliver creatures you control. They don't give it the bonuses to your opponent's slivers. So that made them a lot less interesting to me, because there was always that chance, well, what if I run up against another sliver deck? I'm going to be helping my opponent too. That's removed now. Again, you could be getting some of that if you're mixing the different ones to get groups together, which often happens. But I just don't find it as interesting. Yes, technically it's better because you don't have to worry about potentially helping your opponent. You're also not going to get random helps from your opponent either. I just don't like it as much. I wish they'd stuck with slivers helped all other slivers. It was more thematic and felt better to me than just my own hive type thing that's going on with these new ones. Blur Sliver, 2/2 for 3 slivers you control have haste. I'd still rather run the Heart Sliver for 2 that does the same thing. And again, this is you control instead of all slivers, yada yada, but just on the size cost ratio, I mean. Battle Sliver, 5 for a 3/3. Sliver creatures you control get +2 attack, just +2 attack. So they took one that used to be a 2/2 for 4, made it a 3/3 for 5, and again the U clause. And it's an uncommon now instead of a common with the bone splitter, sliver, whatever. Thorncast Sliver. Here's the red rare. 5 for a 2/2. Sliver creatures you control have, whenever this creature attacks, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. That can be a strong ability, for sure. Whenever you attack, you get to ping something. And it's either extra damage to the player's face that they can't stop, or getting rid of some annoying blockers and things before they can block. Yeah, I mean, I won't say it's bad. It's definitely got its uses. Here's the revamped Muscle Sliver. 1/1 for 2. All sliver creatures you control, again, instead of just all slivers, get +1/+1. All slivers I control get +1/+1. Technically better, not as flavorful. I don't like it as much, but it's still a very efficient sliver, and if you're just looking for good 2-drops that make your guys stronger, you could run this and Muscle Sliver very easily together in a deck. I won't deny that in the slightest. No matter how much the slivers change, their collective might remains. So there's that. You got Ground Shaker Sliver, 7 cost. I'm sorry, but for a 7 cost sliver, this is just sad. I mean, 5/5 is a big body. You've got Gemhide Sliver type stuff going on, so yeah, it's potentially castable if you've got 3 or 4 slivers in play, plus some lands. Slivers you control have Trample. You could get this for 3 mana in Horn Sliver. You could get it for 6 in the Battering Sliver. 7 mana now. It is a 5/5, but it's just getting more expensive, and Trample is usually not the most effective ability you can give slivers, in my opinion. I mean, it's something, but and again, the U control thing. These slivers mostly don't impress me in various ways, like that one, or this one here, Mana Weft Sliver, is great, but it's basically just the reworked Gemhide Sliver all over again. Except it's you control. Sorry. For 7, though, and only Trample. Yeah, exactly. 7 mana is a lot to pay for a creature. Mana weft. I'd much rather play a brood sliver for 5 that makes all my slivers give me more tokens if they get through, or something like that. 1/1 for 2. Sliver creatures you control have tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Yeah, it's Gemhide Sliver. Except as an uncommon instead of a common, and with the you control clause. Still good. Certainly playable. Technically better, but again, all the caveats I've already put in. Megantic Sliver. The green rare. Sliver creatures you control get +3/+3. And it's a 3/3, which makes itself a 6/6 for 6. Very expensive again, but at least it's making your whole side +3/+3, which is a nice solid effect. I'll give it that. Here we're into white. Sentinel Sliver. Creatures you control have vigilance. 2/2 for 2. That is a much cheaper, more efficient way to give vigilance, and I appreciate that at least. There you go. There's a common 2/2 for 2 sliver for spreading vigilance around. It's decent. Not much else to say about it. Steel Form Sliver. Sliver creatures you control get +0/+1, 2/2 for 3. Instead of the plated sliver, which was a 1/1 for 1 that did the same ability, except for all slivers not you control. I just don't like it as much. I mean, it's still probably usable. The ability stacks quite nicely. Though slivers may sometimes resemble us, they are not human. Anyone who fights them must remember this. Saralina, Paladin of the Northern Verge. Yeah, that's the other thing. They changed the design of the slivers at this time and made them look far more human-like. Yeah, you can see it on most of these, really, that we were looking through if you're paying attention. They still seem some of them more sliverish than others, but they definitely started to look more and more humanoid, human-ish in the design as well. Yeah, I just didn't appreciate a lot of these design changes to slivers at this time. I thought they really lost something from those original 3 waves. Bone Scythe Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have double strike. So the first double striking sliver they made was 3/3 for 6. This is a 2/2 for 4, so much more efficient casting cost, costing 2 less to get your double strike. I can appreciate that for sure. But again, the design issues with the U control and the humanoidishness. Their appendages are sharper than our swords and quicker than our bows. Do you play Commander or Standard? A bit of both. The games I played most recently last week were Commander games, although in 3 games I never actually played my Commander in any of them. So that tells you how I approach Commander, basically. I basically play it just as a Highlander deck with, yes, there's a Commander there if I'm ever looking for something to do. But yeah, I do play both Commander and Standard. Although by Standard I mean 60 card constructed, because I'm more inclined to build vintage decks, even though I don't have a huge vintage pool. I've got a few things, but I just would rather play with all the cards I have rather than worry about what the current sets are. That's basically what it is. My hubby hasn't played in a while, but he thinks he played a bit of both. Yeah, I think most people I know played a bit of both. 60 card constructed formats were the standard for a long, long time. It's just how decks were. But it seems like Commander EDH, the 100 card singleton formats have really taken over, which I think is a bit of a loss. I think the strategy in the other format is a bit better. But it's still casual fun for Magic playing the other way. And then we've got Hive Strings, which is not a sliver, but makes slivers, so I threw it in here. 3-cost sorcery, put 2 1/1 colorless sliver creature tokens onto the battlefield. Sliver young are sorted into clutches according to their potential and their future role. Human scholars can only guess how those are determined. Next, we've got a Gale Rider Sliver. Slivers you control have flying, 1/1 for 1. So this is pretty much strictly better than the winged Sliver from Gen 1.
That was kind of neat.
It does look pretty neat. I'll give it that. Getting your winged Sliver for 1 blue instead of a blue and a colorless is certainly an upgrade. Again, the creatures you control is, like I say, technically better, but for me a little irksome. And its humanoid shape is hidden a little bit by those wings, so I don't mind that art as badly. I think I opened a box of M14 or something, and so that's how I happened to get some of these, but I'm not sure where they all went, because when I went through and grabbed a handful, I ended up with a good selection for red, white, and green. But just the 2 black rares, or black and red, blue rares. I don't have the common or uncommon slivers here for these, so I assume there were some. Masters of Adaptation Gale Riders serve multiple purposes useful to the hive. When they're not patrolling their territories, their majestic wings serve to circulate cool air through the vast hive chambers. I always played MTGA. That's not Magic the Gathering Online. Magic the Gathering Arena must be. But mainly standard. I got some real cards. Got 1 of the Warhammer sets, and I also got 4 Demonic Tutors, LOL. Demonic Tutor is a very solid card, to be honest. Probably the best tutor they've ever made. You could make a case for some other ones in specific situations, but it's just such a strong card. Congrats, man. That's definitely, if you're gonna have a classic card, that's a good one to have. Then we've got Siphon Sliver. 3 cost, 2/2. Slivers you control have lifelink. And again, there was a 4 cost sliver in white that gave lifelink as a 3/3. This isn't that much more efficient, but it is more efficient. And again, the you control thing. I like that flying sliver for 1. Yeah, I'll admit that's a solid upgrade. It's decent. I've heard they've made one that's flying in haste or something like that in white red as a 2-color 2-drop or something like that. You know, like a white and a red. For that would be even more efficient and nice. I don't have one currently, but they have made some very efficient slivers going forward. I just don't like the changes to them that came along with it. Here's another artifact, creature they made that doesn't give any sliver abilities, but counts as a sliver. This one is a 2/2 for 3, somewhere in between the 5 cost Vesner Sliver and the original metallic Sliver. Sliver construct. Slivers destroy those who come close to the skep, the central hive. Shards of torn metal litter the ground as a warning to any artificers inquisitive about the hive's inner workings. When the hive must feed, every appendage becomes an additional mouth. Yeah. And then we're back into just some other extra slivers I had here. Yeah, nothing else new there, really. Oh, I've got, see, here's the new sliver tokens, and again, they're humanoid looking as opposed to the classic ones from Legions that, again, were more Zergish looking, but still very much sliver design as opposed to the more humanoid versions, which, yeah, I'll stick to the original 3 generations for the most part. Like I said, there's some very efficient ones that they printed later, not only in this, but in subsequent waves after, that I might pick up copies of and sub into my decks if I start building sliver decks again. But for me, the first 3 generations of slivers really set the stage for what slivers are. And I don't like some of the deviations they started to make after that. So, we're still live.
Disconnected for a second.
So yeah, right back to Tempest. Good old muscle sliver. They're still making, versions in different places. Took them a while to succeed the wing sliver, heart sliver. A lot of good stuff. I still think crystalline sliver is one of the best. I don't think it's been really supplanted as a protection mechanism entirely. There are some other good ones out there to supplement it. And the Sliver Queen, still on the reserve list, still a very solid addition to any Sliver deck. You can do some neat combos with it, again with a Basil Sliver or the Heartstone, or even Mana Echoes that we looked at back in the Onslaught set review last week. You can do, it's a strong card. And even just as a 7/7 body for 5, back when it was first released, it's a fairly solid card to have, no question. Being an all-color card, it also played nicely with things like Dream Halls if you were having trouble casting it.
That's okay. It's
Sorry,
okay
I play like them. Elf Tribal and hate Slivers. Yeah, not everyone has to like them, but it's good to be aware of them, even if you don't like them. No, and I just like the history of them. I play Elf Tribal too, to be honest.
I had to hide a comment because elves are good. So
yeah, we are a family channel, so try and keep it that way, please.
But we understand your sentiment.
Oh yeah, Slivers can be frustrating for sure.
I didn't like when you played them against me. I hated it.
Sliver Overlord, the second legend they came out with, and then for Gen 3, the Sliver Legion.
That's okay, we get it.
Very
now you know.
Very strong dudes. And yeah, just lots of different strategies, lots of different combinations, and every time they create another wave of Slivers, there's more possibilities, basically. Again. But I love some of this classic Wave 1, Wave 2 Slivers. Time Spiral added a lot, I'll give it that, and it was still close enough to the original mold. And they worked it right into the story of Time Spiral, so I really appreciate what they did with the Time Spiral Slivers as well. Like I say, the first 3 waves to me are classic Slivers. And then there's all the changes that came in after that. My brother has a 5-color Sliver, and when he plays it, literally plays...
Status?
Is that Stasis?
I'm not sure. And he can't play.
Yeah, I have...
Oh, he meant I literally play Stasis deck and...
Yeah, I've had Stasis decks as well. That was the first deck I ever won a tournament with, was a Stasis deck. They're fun to break out. They do have Vigilance Slivers now, which mean the Slivers don't have to tap to their attack, which makes it a little bit harder on a Stasis player. But yeah, they have to have it ready to go at the time, otherwise it's not going to be very helpful. But yeah. That was sort of my review of the first 3 generations, plus a little bit talking about what happened afterwards. But,
it's blue-white Stasis, and I tap everything when it comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to run blue-white Stasis, and there's a couple of different ways to do that. The deck I took was a Chronostasis deck. It played Chronotog, Kismet, and Stasis as sort of a 3-card combo. And would just skip all my turns to let my opponent draw himself out. It was a little nasty, but it was fun for me. Barry, Sliver High Lord has Indestructible. Yeah, that... I think I remember hearing about that one. I just never got around to picking one up. Hubby looked it up, lol. Yeah. Well, like I say, they've made some very strong Slivers, and they keep doing it. I'm sure they're due for another new wave of Slivers anytime now. Who knows, maybe it'll be in this next new base set type thing they're working on, or maybe it'll be in one of the future expansions in the next year or 2, who knows. But they like to bring them back every once in a while, and justifiably so. It's an intriguing type. I just wish they'd go back to the more classic Sliver design and not these humanoid things.
Would it be neat if they came out with like kind of like a retro type of set? Just go back to kind of the old
Well, they do from time to time.
But not using the same cards, like come up with like new cards or maybe your different.
Oh, sometimes they like to put things in the retro frames and stuff, and I can appreciate the style at least. But yeah, things are always changing. I did sub. I'm hoping we go back to the tribal arcs and have the decks again. Yeah, I do like the tribal sets that you got. You know,
I typed wrong.
Onslaught and Legions were great for tribal stuff. And there have been others since, but yeah, goblins and elves, they've been around since the beginning, merfolk as well. Goblins, I think, was the first sort of tribal deck that really got some steady support over a few sets from Fallen Empires and the Dark and that. And I mean, merfolk and that got a few things too, but I think goblins picked up a little bit more. I like goblins versus elves, or you know them, slivers versus mirrors. Yeah. And then they got the changelings now, which sort of muddies the whole thing. Goblin bombs or combo elf ball. Yeah. I like to combo my elves into like a mana making machine and then use that to either throw a fireball at my opponent's face or drop something huge like Eldrazi and just go ham. That's what I tend to do with elves these days is build them into a big surprise like one of those.
You know, it could be fun if we had like the skills and the
although
technical know-how to like do a video where you're playing a game of Magic against somebody and the person who loses, you look at them at the end and they look like they literally went through the battle.
Oh, who knows? It'll be fun to do some games on stream one of these days.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm still having fun sharing some topics from my experiences growing up playing this game and my memoirs of it. And I hope people can find something enjoyable in it. So thanks for joining me. I think I've covered basically all I have to say about Slivers for the time being. So
we don't have any more streams unless we have a pop-up mail day stream until Pokemon Day on Thursday, and you're working, so
yeah, I'm going on to night shifts starting tomorrow night. So next Monday, I'm going to be still working night shifts. So I'm not going to be able to do a Magic stream next week.
So we'll either do a video or maybe I'll go pick up some Bloomburrow somewhere if I can find some.
No, maybe if you feel like doing a little something or.
But it's just going to be me opening it because I don't know the gameplay side of it. I just like the art.
Fair enough.
So
yeah. Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
He has another comment he made.
I do Jorga Warcaller combo.
Thank you.
Imperious to tap and give +1/+1s to Jorga, and then give haste by pitching Anger to the grave. Yeah, that could work. I had other things in there too, like I have the elf that you can tap to give +X/+X, where X is the number of elves. So if you can sneak an elf through, you could use that to finish somebody off pretty quickly. You can make a pre-record video for Monday and do it as premiere.
Yeah, we could. The only thing is he's going to be working, so I won't be able to answer any questions.
Yeah, and to do another big stream just to pre-record it. I don't know. Half the fun of doing these is getting the comments live and interaction
That's a lot
too.
More fun. Yeah.
So I do have some more topic ideas. I haven't fully settled on what one I want to do next anyway, so this will give me an extra week to think about it and settle on one. I could go through the time spiral precons in general. Like I said, we covered this one pretty well today, but or I could go into dual decks, things like that, or just some of my own decks. Or maybe do some play stuff. There's a few things I could do. I have a few more recent sets that I could work at too, but to me they're not as interesting as the older, more classic sets. You could
make a video of building a deck and just put that up as a premiere.
Oh, maybe.
And just ask people leave comments and then read the comments later.
We did pick up some more of those dollar store packs of Magic cards as well. They can be interesting to go through and just see what randomness you get. Whether you're planning on drafting them or building something with them or just seeing what you can find. It's interesting. I wish I had Discord. I would love to dual stream with you guys and open and talk shop. That would be fun. I'm not heavily on Discord, but I'm on a couple of pages on there.
We don't exactly have
I've
our
been
own,
thinking of ideas for
Becca
when I
has a
bring hubby
Discord
onto
that
my
we're part of.
channel for Magic Nights. That could be fun too. I'd like to see that, Becca. Whoops,
just don't do it on nights that we stream.
Well, it'll be interesting if we could actually get some sort of joint stream going on for something.
I don't even know how to do that. That would be awesome, though.
It would be interesting if we could figure it out, but
if you ever do, it's free to download.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, if you ever do, it's free to download, and everyone is nice.
Hey, One Thug, how are you doing? We're just finishing up here.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, my cold is.
Well, thanks for that, but yeah, we're just getting to the end of this stream. We've gone through the first 3 generations of Slivers, Tempest, Stronghold, into Legions, which had the Overlord added in a little bit later on in Scourge, but mainly Legions for Generation 2. And then Time Spiral block with Time Spiral, Planar Chaos, Future Sight was a big, almost doubled what was there. And then just talked briefly about the changes they made after that to Slivers, and I don't know, just it seems unoriginal in terms of the design changes. I'm not a big fan of the new Slivers compared to the old Slivers. I like the old Sliver design so much better.
But yeah,
they're not meant to be human, really. No. Like, it's anyways. And they're not supposed to be human even here, but they're make them more humanoid for some strange reason. Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, just an overview for new people. Mondays is our Monday Night Magic streams, Magic the Gathering.
Yep.
Thursdays is Pokemon. And Saturdays is kind of like whatever we feel like day.
Yeah, it's more an oddball. We've been doing a lot of Star Trek recently. Sometimes
although the last one was Sunday because
other things like Lorcana or Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I've got some other card games that we could work in there at some point. I'm hoping to do some Overpower and some Star Wars CCG and some more Lord of the Rings TCG, and eventually I want to get into some Harry Potter streams. I've got some
teach people how to
plans for that.
How to play regular card games.
Yeah, how to play
crib,
and euchre and go fish and crazy eights, and that could be something different.
Crazy eights, haven't played that forever.
How to play chess, maybe whip out the crokinole board. Ooh, get the kids out for a all-night Risk party. Playing Risk or Axis and Allies, or we've got some Lord of the Rings. I still think Robo Rally, which was a Wizards of the Coast game as well, was a fun little game.
Your Marble game.
Marvel?
The Marble.
Marble.
We picked it up at the thrift store, the one with the marble, Fireball Island or something like that.
Oh yeah, the Fireball Island. That was a good old classic.
Did you see my message? Yeah, I did. I did, Becca. Yeah, for in Korean, I think on eBay the last Korean PSA 10 that was sold was around 800 Canadian.
Yeah, who knows?
I'm not prepared to sell mine though. I'm gonna hold on to it for a while. I like the art, and winning that was kind of like the highlight of the week and the month even.
All right, so I guess we should wrap things up for tonight, but thanks for coming.
I don't know.
You had something else you wanted to?
Yeah, no, I'm just kind of checking. There's people live, but no.
There are some crazy cards out there for sure. That's another stream I want to do, is how over time I just sort of lucked into a vintage collection.
That could be fun.
Because the cards that I picked up that are sort of high value, there's a story behind most of them. It'd be neat to share stuff like that one of these days. And I've actually got a lot of the sort of vintage staples to build one decent solid deck if I really try. I'm missing a few things. I don't have everything by any means, but and it depends whether people mind you playing stuff like Collector's Edition. That's another whole topic. Who are we rating?
No, nobody's live. Nobody that I know, anyways.
You don't see anybody?
No. Well, wait, no, Jay's Corner's live. I think we rated him last time, kinda.
Anyone
But
got
they're
any
all
suggestions?
They're all Pokemon people too, so I don't know who wants to do Pokemon.
You got any ideas, One Thug fam?
I mean, we could go, and if anybody wants to go watch it, or we could just end it for tonight. Give us ideas for other people next time.
Well, that's a possibility too.
Oh wait, is Spencer? Spencer is. Oh, he's playing a game. We could go and do Spencer McKay again. He's doing Little Nightmares Keeping Me Up at Night. Not so much family friendly. So maybe not. We like Spencer, but I don't know. I'm not really seeing anybody.
I don't know.
Sorry. There's Jay's Corner, but I mean, there's only 3 people here anyways. So, I appreciate everyone. Turn this over on us, please, for a second. And we're going to say goodnight.
Yeah, we got to wrap up. Start of another week. You know, for those who missed, I got a haircut today.
Yeah, I think
scary.
Oh, people are coming back in briefly. I'm very my nose is rough. So yeah. Hopefully a good night's sleep will make me feel better. Trainer Glenn? Well, there's only 3 of us though. I mean, we can pop over and say hi, but
these streams tend to not go out with a bang, do they?
No. Well, I mean, and that's fine. It's both, especially the magic ones and the other ones. I don't see Trainer Glenn. If you have a link, go ahead and drop it, Becca. I can't find them on here. I've subbed to so many people.
You should think of something big to say for the end of the stream to get
people
to stick around. Who knows? What else we got?
Oh, it could be fun to go and do just like go into a shop and be like, hey, what can we trade for this? What would you give us for this?
It's actually not that new. This is actually, believe it or not, basically my usual haircut. I just go a long time between getting them, so it grows out substantially and then gets cut back, and then grows out substantially. But
it's I don't know. Oh wait, hold on a second. I found him. He is live. That could be fun. All right, I found his thing. Just give me a second.
Oh wow, we got a spike in viewership all of a sudden.
All right, everybody who's here, hold on. I know it's not. If you don't like Magic, please at least go over here or not Magic, but if you like Pokemon.
Thanks for tuning in for our Sliver stream, and it was fun. If you missed it, feel free to review it if you like. We went through the first 3 generations of Slivers, and to me, they're the really formative ones. So
yeah, here is the link for. Why is it not doing it? Oh, there we go. Oh my goodness, tapping is being stupid.
You got it all ready to go?
Yeah, it's there, and just say Spocat raid. I don't think I've ever raided Trainer Glenn, so. Oh, raid. Spocat raid. So yeah, head over there.
Rid them of us. There we go. There we are.
It'll be a mini raid, but Trainer Glenn's kind of everywhere, and it's kind of nice to be able to send some people his way.
Right.
So he helps out with a lot of channels. Oh no, it's not. My chat's not working. There we go.
So once again, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And feel free to drop us a line if you have topics you'd like me to address. It might be something I know nothing about and won't feel confident with, but who knows? Maybe it's something that I could.
Hey, Matt Ball, we're just finishing up our Sliver stream, so feel free to go rewatch. And we're going to raid Trainer Glenn, who is a Pokemon
the first 3 generations of Slivers, from Tempest through to Future Sight, and then talked a little bit about how they changed after that. But that was my main focus, was the first 3 generations of Slivers for the stream. So
So yeah, I'm gonna wait till I see a Spocat raid. I'll turn this up a little.
Thanks for dropping in, even though
Yeah.
you kind of missed it, but thanks for coming.
I'm not seeing the comments. Maybe the comments are just off. But once I see a comment, do I see anybody saying Spocat raid? I don't see anybody saying Spocat raid.
Oh well.
But I'm not saying anything.
We tried.
We tried.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, everybody. Oh, there we go. One Thug's doing it. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Bye for now. Catch you soon.